Undertale is a game that has captured the hearts of many people. This is primarily due to its cast of likable characters. After all, if you don't care about the characters, then the game's defining mechanic, the ability to choose between sparing or killing the enemies you encounter, wouldn't really matter to anyone. Yet, I often feel as though some of the game's most interesting characters are frequently overlooked or widely misinterpreted. To me, Alphys is one of those characters. Alphys is set up to be a stereotypical nerd, an intelligent but awkward individual who spends more time inside of her house than out of it. We're aware from the get-go that she's socially anxious and a tad bit self-depreciating, but most of her lines are played for laughs, not sympathy. Aside from a few cringe-worthy statements, her early dialogue is just comedic and cute. However, as you make your way through Hotland, her character is expanded upon and new facets of her personality are revealed. With these revelations, she grows into something far more complex than a shy girl with a penchant for science. The first time we meet Alphys, it is revealed that she has been watching us from a screen in her lab since we left the ruins. She says that she has started to root for you because, when watching someone on a screen, it's hard not to. This line, along with the anime figurines and comic books that scatter her laboratory, tell us that Alphys is an escapist. She devotes herself and retreats into fantasy in order to escape her reality. This automatically begs the question, what exactly is she escaping from? But we'll talk more about that later. Frisk's journey, up until Alphys meets them, has not been real to her. It has simply been another fantasy for her to retreat into, and now that she is finally interacting with Frisk, she has a chance to interject herself into this fantasy. So within this fantasy, she designates herself as the protagonist's helper, someone with a level of knowledge and capability that surpasses even the heroes. A watchful voice in the protagonist's ear, guiding them through sticky situations while still managing to avoid extensive in-person interaction. This fantasy makes her feel useful. It allows her to present herself as being helpful, intuitive, and an insightful mentor, when in reality she is anything but. She wants Frisk to look at her and see this version of herself, because she is totally convinced that Frisk would not love her for who she is. She feels wholeheartedly that she has to create an elaborate persona in order to have any chance of being appreciated by or viewed as useful by Frisk. In order to make sure that Frisk believes in this fantasy version of herself, she sabotages their entire mission, all with the intention of reinventing it to work in her favor. She comes up with the elaborate scheme she does just to keep her fantasy alive, just to avoid being rejected, just to reinvent herself, to avoid having to face the fact that she's not the hero she wants to be. By doing this, she lies again and again, and she puts Frisk in mortal danger, as it turns out that she doesn't have as much control over the Hotlands and Metaton as she thought. I'd just like to review the severity of the situation. She lied to and manipulated the person she wanted to impress the most because she was so insecure and self-hating that she genuinely believed they could not possibly love her otherwise. She was so unstable and bent on being someone else that she put innocent lives in danger by creating a scheme with so many variables she inevitably lost control of it. All because she despised herself so much that she could not live her life unless living as a false version of herself. Her self-destructive behavior has gotten so severe and out of control that it's damaging every single person who has so much come in contact with her. That's how far gone she is when we meet her. With this revelation, it's made clear that Alphys' self-depreciating and escapist nature is deeper than we first thought. Something else that tells us that is, of course, the discovery of the True Lab. When we are brought to the lab, we see a place that looks like it belonged to anyone but Alphys. The shades of gray are in total contrast with the bright shades of pink and yellow we've begun to associate with her. It is here that we learn about the horror of the amalgamates. We also learn that Alphys herself created Flowey. Additionally, we discover that Alphys got her position as the royal scientist by lying and saying that she artificially created a monster soul, when really she just transferred an already existing soul into a new body. We also learn of Alphys' avoidance, and of how she was so ashamed and disgusted with her own mistakes that she could not bring herself to own up to them. Instead, she became a recluse, refusing to leave her lab to face the real world. And suddenly, it all makes sense. Alphys' self-hatred, her escapism, her lies, she is so disgusted with her own failures that she can't even handle confronting them. She doesn't answer any of the amalgamate's relatives, she doesn't reveal any information about the experiments to anyone. She hides by devoting herself to her comics and her shows and her games and really just anything she can use to disconnect herself from her life and her mistakes. When you call Undyne in a specific part of the dump, she talks about how she first met Alphys there, staring contemplatively into the abyss below. And in the True Lab, Alphys talks about how she was afraid that she would not come back because she might have done something cowardly. Additionally, in a couple of neutral endings, mostly ones where you kill Undyne, Alphys is revealed as being missing. These comments all allude to Alphys having potentially committed suicide by the end of the game if certain events don't occur. This is something I believe bears repeating. Alphys is suicidal. She has been so wounded by her own cycle of repression and self-destruction that she can no longer cope, and so instead, she decides to take her own life. But in an ideal timeline, the true pacifist timeline, Alphys is able to heal, and she heals in a very real way. She doesn't just magically become mentally stable and morally righteous. but she makes the choice to try and be better. She knows it will be hard, and that continuing to lie and hide would be safer and more comfortable. But she takes a step onto the rocky path of recovery and decides to fight to be better. This is due in large part to Undine. Alphys idolizes Undine. She believes that, above all, Undine is strong, determined, and honest. She is everything that Alphys is not. Yet despite how seemingly different they are, Undine is there for her. She shows her how much she cares whenever they're together. She listens to Alphys talk about anything and everything she's passionate about. She gives Alphys a chance to use her voice. And when Alphys confesses her lies and poor self-worth to Undine, she receives something incredible in response. Something she clearly did not expect. Acceptance, understanding, support. And that's all she really needed. Having Undine and Papyrus and Frisk there to help her through this horrible patch in her life is enough to keep her going. Enough to inspire her to become better. Not just for herself, not even just for the people she's wronged, but for the people who love and believe in her. With the right resources and in the right environment, Alphys is given the opportunity to not only face her demons, but to own them. The lighthearted, depressive comments Alphys makes on Undernet, posts about being trash, and the somewhat comedic mentions of her own anxiety paint a completely different picture of Alphys than the one we come to know at the end of the game. They portray her as being the shy, cute scientist who's depressed and anxious, but in a laughable or adorable way, I guess. A scientist who spends most of her time making ice cream machines and cell phone upgrades. This is the version of Alphys that most people, even after playing the game to its completion, think of when they hear her name. But the revelation of the True Lab shows us the true extent of her self-loathing. It shows sides of her character that she should not be distanced from. The reason I believe she should not be distanced from the atrocities she's committed is because I believe that Alphys is a very real representation of a mentally ill individual. And like all mentally ill people, the lighthearted aspects of her personality that Alphys openly presents and the messy, dark parts of her personality that she keeps hidden, they go hand in hand with each other. She would not be who she is without one side or the other. Someone who is insecure or depressed or anxious or all of those things might seem together at a glance, but there's a whole lot of horrific stuff happening just between the surface of that composure. So distancing Alphys from her darkness is not only a discredit to her character and the role she serves in the narrative, but a discredit to the deeper meaning of her character, her role as a metaphor for those who suffer from depression, anxiety, and feelings of worthlessness. For the most part, Undertale adheres to a strict black and white moral code. If you show mercy, you get the good ending. If you kill people, you get the bad ending. It is for this reason that Alphys truly stands out. She's a liar and a manipulator. She is cowardly and she is unethical. She has committed crimes against her society so grand she cannot even bear to think about them. She has even created the game's primary antagonist. And yet, she is not a bad person. She is not an entirely good person either. She lies in the gray expanse between good and evil, a place that is rarely explored in Undertale despite how often we come across it in life. And that's one of the many things that makes her and her struggle feel so real. Yes, we don't have an underground in our world, and I'm sure none of us have created white eldritch abominations either, but we have all made mistakes. We have all done things that we regret, and I'm sure each and every one of us has wondered at some point or another if we are truly good, if our past faults will always haunt us. Alphys is there to show us that we are not defined by our mistakes. We are defined by our willingness to address and overcome them. And that is why I love Alphys. If you have anything else to say about Alphys or any character from Undertale, go ahead and share it in the comment section below. Thank you all for watching, and remember to subscribe for more videos like this one.